So that's fine.
Okay. What did you want me to hit? Sorry.
So go to the bottom and you can hit share and it can
Oh,
just,
yeah.
you can share your screen with me
Yeah.
eventually. I'm not going to start off with my deck, but I
Okay.
will,
Okay.
okay, cool. Thank you. Oh yeah. Okay. We're getting, okay.
Okay. See, if we give it a couple minutes, more people, Heather, will join
Oh,
us.
Linda has two people in her.
It's
Good for
Linda and
you.
Alan Andrews.
Yeah. From
Hi.
Florida.
Oh, yay. Hi,
We're
Yay.
both
guys.
we're both mentees.
Yay.
And mentors.
All right.
I mean
Awesome. This
mentors,
is good.
excuse me.
And Susan and Rudy and Brenda. It's great.
For Kathy's mentees.
Yeah.
That's right.
I love it. How long have you been a mentor, Kathy?
5.5 years.
Oh, you guys have been 5.5 years? Really? That's awesome.
But just
Well,
so
when
you
I
know,
left Highland Park in 2009, that's when I started mentoring
Very
a
cool.
student from Deerfield. Began.
Very cool.
Yep.
Okay, well, we're going to get started just because I want to respect everyone's time and we have a lot of material to get through. So I want to introduce Heather. Heather can give her own little bio to everyone, but she has been a tremendous resource for us at CBO, helping our students develop some very needed adulting skills. We are going to work with her also this summer on our career prep series. She has tailored this session specifically towards mentors working with students who are going to graduate college and need to seek employment. So she has done this all kind of for us specifically. And if everybody can just turn off their microphone, that would be terrific. And Heather, take it away.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, you can turn off your microphone just for like, the static reasons. But if you have a question while I'm going through this, please like consider this a conversation. And I don't want it to be just me presenting everything and throwing up all this information if you have questions in the moment, because there's a lot to talk about. And I think because it sounds like a bunch of you have been mentors in the past, I'm sure that this will resonate with some of your experiences. And I hope that through this you walk away feeling just more educated about Gen Z as a generation, but also how to best support a first generation graduate. So a little bit about me. I I have been in talent management and people, human capital, recruiting, everything people related has been really my career for the last 25 years. And I have spent the bulk of my career either working inside of a company, building out their teams in a startup capacity in their company, or I've been on the other end where I'm on an agency and I'm partnering with companies to identify top talent to integrate into their company as well. So, but HR operations has also been something that I have worked with coaching managers and such based on just being within an HR capacity. So I have a lot of experience with that. Also, I have a lot of experience interviewing at every level, but entry level graduates have been throughout the course of my career always individuals I've liked to continue to on my own prep for interviews, or if I'm working on behalf of a company interviewing candidates for entry level roles. So I've really been able to see the kind of the evolution, if you will, of their confidence level. And what happened to me about I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago was I was interviewing entry level grads on behalf of a company, but I was also having some friends ask me if I could prep up their kids for interviews. And I was just starting to notice that there was a lack of confidence going on in the way they spoke with me, in the way they interacted with me, their follow up. It was chock full of a lot of insecurity. And I would get off the phone thinking that they went to these really prestigious universities and be kind of dumbfounded at how ill equipped they were to interview. And it saddened me. And to be honest with you guys, I did nothing about it, but I kind of put it in the back of my mind. And then about a year ago, a year and a half ago, I read a book called The Anxious Generation. I'm not sure if any of you teachers out there have read the book, but it is by a man. His name is Jonathan Haidt. And he is really starting the movement for taking phones out of kids' hands and trying to, wait till eighth or beyond to equip kids with their smartphones. And within the first chapter of that book, he talks about how in 2007, that was the launch of the smartphone. And how we sent these kids basically to Mars with the smartphone, not really understanding how it was going to impact them for the course of their lives. But more importantly, those that were going through puberty really got, sideswiped, if you will, of not only the insecurities they already felt because they were 13 or 14 or 12 years old, but like now they have the forward facing camera, all the apps, the social media starts to rise. And so I had this epiphany that those were my kids that I was interviewing. They were the ones who were born and were going through puberty at the time. And they are now entering the workplace along with experiencing COVID. And those two situations, even apart, like separate, they are obviously very serious for adolescents and for just growing up in general, but put them together and here we are. And so that really sparked me to start this Adulting 101 masterclass. So I coach the students in terms of prepping them for life beyond college, whether it's careers, financial literacy, what it takes to move, explaining all of the kind of nuts and bolts of life as an adult, and really facing that reality as they graduate. And I also work internally at companies doing communications and business etiquette training and building their confidence inside of a company, to educate them on what those unwritten rules are that we all talk about. And we're going to talk more about those unwritten rules that I would love for you to talk about with your mentees, because I think that is part of a big problem within a company setting right now. And I don't know if you've seen any of, I mean, there's constantly articles being released every day about Gen Z getting fired within their first year, Gen Z, bringing their parents to interviews. There's so many situations that are happening. And the other piece to it is that we have become very overbearing parents. We're no longer the helicopter parents, we're the snowplow parents. And so they're not learning these really simple life skills that we learned just based on our own personal experience of growing up. So I'll give you one quick example and then we'll dive into the deck. One of the greatest things I think we had growing up was a landline. And that is because when you had a landline, at the time, there was no caller ID. And you did not know if you were picking up the phone to answer if your phone rang, you had to say hello, how are you? You had to get into a conversation with anybody who was on that other line and be polite. And you did not know who that person was going to be unless it was a solicitor. And we always learn like, no, thank you, goodbye. But other than that, you had to pick up the phone and be friendly and connect. Also, you wanted to talk to your friends, you would have to call your friends' homes, and the parents would typically pick up and you would say, hi, Mr. and Mrs. This is Heather. May I please speak to? And if you were really good friends with the kid, you would, probably have a conversation with the parents. Oh, how are you doing? How was your day? It was great. Thank you very much for asking. Like, these were embedded into our lives. And this is not happening any longer for this generation. They have immediate connection with their friends through text. That's most of their communication. They're able to kind of think through sometimes their action, but there's no kind of fluidity going on there and connection. So the landline to me is like one of my most favorite examples because it's not something we necessarily thought of as an important moment in our time, but yet it really did shape our abilities to speak to people older than us with confidence, to understand how to navigate the uncertain of who's going to pick up the phone or when, and all of those things kind of all in one. So without further ado, does anyone have any questions before we dive in? Okay. Let me share with you now. You're all okay. I don't know which window I'm going to bring up, but hopefully you guys aren't overwhelmed by a few. Okay, all my tabs that I have. I have a lot of tabs. All right, so let me present. Okay. So, trying to get you guys on this side because I know you can see. All right, I can't see you guys, but if it's a problem, just let me know. And if we start to have conversation, I'll just pull out of the deck and we can all kind of talk back and forth. So what I want to accomplish today is really helping all of you bridge that gap for our rising college grads into adulthood and understanding exactly what their perspective is in general, what their communication preferences are, and what their career aspirations are, which are very different than what our career aspirations were. So and we'll dive deeper into that also, but these are really important areas, but most important is the fact that you're here, the fact that you're interested in understanding how to connect with this generation. That is all they're really wanting. The more I get into deeper conversations with just pardon me, with kids and Gen Z or young professionals, or all they're seeking is that connection. So the fact that you're here is just, not just for CBO, but just in general, is hopefully going to help you know how to connect with this group, throughout the course of their careers and their lives. So I want to break down who they are, which is they were born between 97 and 2012. And like I talked about earlier, if you look at those dates, 97 was about when it started and 2007 was when the smartphone was developed. So that gives about 10 years out. 2007 was when it was developed. So think about really where they were when that smartphone was developed and just how much exposure they received in such a short period of time, with parents not having any true understanding of what they were truly being exposed to. They also do not know a world without the internet. They've never experienced anything like, that we can think about knowing and remembering what life was before the internet. When I, my kids like brains blow up when I tell them that. It's like I've told them it took me, an hour to walk to school by myself in the morning. So it's a pretty, mind-blowing thing for them. They are the most diverse generation, and with that diversity comes this very purpose-driven need for the social impact and the equity, and they're very loud about that, which I'm sure you've all seen and experienced in certain perspectives. But they also grew up with a lot of economic uncertainty. And I think all generations obviously grew up in some way, shape, or form in economic uncertainty. The difference is that a lot of Gen Z watched their parents be committed to jobs for now you're in a job typically 5 years max, and then you move on. Back, 10, 15 years ago, you really tried to stick to the same role. But what was happening was when the boomers, my dad was an accountant, my mom was a teacher. That was what they have been throughout their whole lives. But when you're watching your parents be really committed and loyal to a company and then get laid off after 20, 30 years, and it shifted their whole mindset on what work-life balance looks and feels like to them, and what loyalty and commitment looks like to them, because they watched their parents be super loyal and committed and yet lose their jobs. And that obviously sparked a lot of emotional, potentially trauma in their lives. So they are trying to change the narrative with that. They're obviously very tech savvy and entrepreneurial. This is a generation that is watching so many, there's no longer a term celebrity to them. They don't look at celebrities like we did growing up. Influencers in their minds are some sort of celebrity. Why? Because of the amount of followers or the amount of money they could be making or the reach that they have. And the truth is, to be an influencer is just as possible as a celebrity. It's not an easy thing. But watching these influencers creates this entrepreneurial of, I have ideas and I want to do that too, which is why they have become so purpose driven in their careers. And the truth is, and we can open up this conversation at some point, but I see a lot of different trends within a job search and within the job market. I have just noticed in general at every level of any organization is people are really wanting to feel more purposeful in their jobs, and that it's not just Gen Z. So, but they are, this is a full generation full of purpose-driven individuals. And they're also very visual. Why are they visual learners? Well, because they've grown up in front of the phone. So they went through the Great Recession, and we talked a little bit about what that looked like in terms of the economic uncertainty. They're, a generation that is watching cars now be electric and having a lot of very emotional and spirited conversations about what our world is going to look like in the next 100 years. And they've taken a lot of, passion and pride and trying to move towards more, climate responsible decisions. But the big one is obviously COVID and the social emotional implications, the social emotional effect that it had on them. They are still experiencing today, because this is a group that they were going through college through this time. Maybe they were ending high school. They missed some very important moments. And those social emotional experiences have now turned into the conflict resolution and having certain types of connection and communication in the workplace has been difficult for them because of COVID. So social justice movements, I kind of touched on, they're very passionate about what is important to them. And obviously watching the rise of social media, it is a defining, a technology in their lives that that they're all, they're savvy with. With that being said, the gig economy is a huge piece of their outlook in terms of working. So they don't just look at their job as a 8:30 to 5:30 or 9 to 5. They look at it as, this is one of my jobs, and then I'm going to do a side gig. I have the opportunity to make more money doing other things, and I don't need to be just working for my company. I can be making money in other ways as well. And that has also been really pushed through the social media piece. And the last is mental health. And I think mental health is a really interesting topic. I talk a lot about it because when I was growing up and earlier generations, I mean, you never talked about your mental health. You did not admit if you went to a psychologist. You never admitted if you were on medicine of any type. It was something very private, kept very secretive, and you were, embarrassed about it. That is not the truth now. This generation has really taken ownership of their mental health. Again, they've watched their parents burn out and potentially, not be home as much. And they are very, they're very cautious in what situations they get into to ensure that they are protecting their mental health. So how they work is they like to have continuous feedback. And what I say about that is, when I'm coaching my Gen Zers, we do a lot of texting. They'll ask for something and I'll write them back. And I know that's a part of them receiving like immediate gratification, but it's also, they're very leaned into the relationship that is being given to them too. And they love to hear that continuous feedback. And that's really across the entire generation. So you can't just look at your mentee and say, gosh, they seem so high maintenance. It's just how they are wired. Work-life integration, that balance is super important to them. I have a lot of thoughts on where companies think that they're going in terms of instituting a 5-day week program without having any type of hybrid or flexibility. As boomers enter the next 4 years, boomers are going to be completely eligible for retirement, and Gen Z is going to be fully integrated into the workforce. And based on their experiences, I don't see us going back to a full 5-day week model. Or if we do, those companies are just going to lose a ton of really great talent because they're not having the ability to be flexible. They love working collaboratively. They're obviously very technologically efficient, and they look for those deep relationships. So that's the big kind of like who they are. And now I want to talk a little bit about misconceptions. And then if I can ask if there's any particular questions or you want to discuss anything that I've talked about. So Gen Z comes off as very aggressive. And what happens when they come off aggressive is that they are just super uncomfortable and they don't know how to communicate that they're uncomfortable. So instead they come out of the gate super aggressive. So let me give you an example. I've had several examples of an employee wanting a raise. Okay. And instead of going to their hiring manager or their manager and saying, I would like to understand what I need to do in order to get to the next level. Can you talk me through the, what that looks like, what the plan looks like? And instead they go in and say, I want a raise. And if I don't get a raise, I'm going to leave. And they have absolutely no problem saying it like that. They actually don't even care if they leave their jobs without having a job. They say it. They don't know how to say it any other way. It just like, they throw it out there. And then what happens is the manager gets really frustrated resentful, and it's not a good combination, and it's not a good conversation. So being a mentor and talking through these uncomfortable conversations with your mentees, to me, is one of the most important things that you can be doing to support them, because they are not used to having really uncomfortable conversations face to face. If they meet an uncomfortable conversation, they really prefer to text it out or sit behind any type of messaging or email. They do not want to have a face to face. And to me, as a mentor, the more you can push them and encourage them to have those face to face conversations, the more growth that will happen. So, another misconception is they're very entitled. They're not entitled, but they need to understand their purpose and their meaning in their work. And it doesn't need to be a company that's saving the world, if you will. But they need to understand is how they are impacting the entire company as a whole. What does their work mean and what are they doing specifically to contribute? And the truth is, again, this goes back to what I was saying originally about finding meaningful work. I think a lot of generations now are wanting to truly understand what their direct impact is because they want to feel as if it's meaningful, but it gets misconstrued a lot as entitled. And I understand, again, their tone and approach is not great. And what I always say is, it's not their fault. This is their lived experience. But it's our responsibility as older generations to explicitly explain to them why this doesn't work and why this isn't going to be well received. And they're open to hearing that. But instead, what ends up happening is just a lot of intergenerational headbutting of, well, you're entitled and, and aggressive and all of that. And instead of there being a coachable moment, if you will. They're not disloyal. They definitely, though, want to understand their room for growth within an organization. So from a recruiting standpoint, I always say now to companies, they don't care about a beer keg and a ping pong table. They want to know how you are going to support them, both from a professional standpoint, also from a mental health standpoint, but they want to be developing these skills. They want to feel very engaged and productive. And so the truth is, again, people don't stay in their jobs for 20 or 30 years anymore. It's anywhere between 3 to 7 years. I would say 10 years is almost too much. And I look at resumes all day long. And I'm not talking about teachers or people who are in that type of role. I'm talking about, your any other industry, finance, tech, and anywhere from there. It's interesting to companies when they're interviewing candidates who have had 3 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years at multiple companies, because they can take that experience and then apply it to what they have in their company and what needs to be fixed. Authenticity and transparency is literally everything to them. The more vulnerable and honest you can be with them, the bigger impact and the deeper your relationship is going to be. It's not butterflies and rainbows. We know that. But really being able to kind of share your biggest challenges in your life and mistakes that you've made and regrets, but also things that, you did right and that you're proud of and how you came out on the other end. Those are the stories that they want to hear. They don't like inefficient things, so they will take it upon themselves to create processes, even if you don't want them to create processes. I mean, even my kids will get on my phone and be like, Mom, why does it take you 5 clicks to get to this? Like, all you have to do is just this one thing. Here, I did it for you. That's how they think. And they think they're helping. And in a lot of ways they are. Some of us are just used to other ways also. So they want to leverage their experience in that way. And inclusivity is everything to them. They want to know that they're going to walk into a company and feel safe and trust those who they're working for, those who they're working with, and be able to be who they are, their true, authentic, transparent self. Do we have any questions so far? Okay, I hope I'm doing okay. All right, moving on. So supporting your first generation graduates. So this takes on another layer, if you will, right? Because when you are a first generation, there is a lot that you're not even around by osmosis to learn or understand. And there's also a certain pressure on a first generation graduate that the family puts on them probably. And it might not even be said or stated, but then they also are putting a tremendous amount of internal pressure on themselves, which also might not be stated. So when you are connecting with these first gen grads, they are already feeling, first of all rising grads are feeling insecure. I mean, period. So now add the extra layer of not knowing if they have the right networks or how to network or how to even go about looking for a job or finding a job or interviewing or all those things. That's baked into them in addition, because they don't necessarily have the resources that other graduates do. And so imposter syndrome obviously sneaks in. And I always say, like, everybody suffers from imposter syndrome their whole entire lives. Everyone has these moments where they're like, should I be here? What should I be doing? And my advice, and it's something, I would perhaps share with your mentees as they grow throughout their career, is if you feel as if you received an opportunity in any way, a job, a lunch or a coffee or a networking event, or joining a league of any kind, like anything that you feel that's making you a little uncomfortable, like I don't belong here, I shouldn't do this, that's when you do it. So those are the moments that you grow the most. So the imposter syndrome, while it's there, the negativity is getting in your head. In that moment, you can identify and say, wait, if that's what I'm saying to myself, then I really should be doing the opposite and going after it, because it's making me a little uncomfortable. Like, I can't do it, but I can. And then code switching. So meaning that, what the environment and the culture is in their home versus what they are going to be in a workplace could be really drastically different. And having that code switching can feel like a lot of pressure as well. So my feeling is the more you can communicate with them very explicitly, the better that they are. And it might sound like almost like, how am I telling them that like they should show up to a meeting 5 minutes before the meeting, because like everybody knows that, right? Or if you're running late, you should give some sort of communication. I'm running late, I will be there shortly, my apologies. Again, that's another kind of unwritten rule, if you will, in life, in business, showing that respect, having that professional etiquette, dressing appropriately for events or for the office, asking the questions. These unwritten rules in the office are really important for them to learn and understand, to integrate easier. And no one tells them, because no one told us. And you know what? We were fine. I know we were fine, but we also didn't grow up with phones in front of our faces, not having the kind of connection and communication with other humans, or going through COVID. And these two things alone, along with obviously all the other things that I listed, they are so they have made such a deep impact that they just don't know. So the more clear that we can be with them on how to approach other people, how to write emails, thank you emails, not waiting a week to write a thank you note to somebody, but writing it right away. Like these little things that, you have to just educate somebody about versus expecting them to know. And your networks are going to be part of their network. They're really uncomfortable networking. And we're going to talk a little more about that in a slide or two, but I don't want you connecting them with your broader network until they feel really confident and comfortable in connecting. And it might take a bit of a push when you as the mentor realize they are ready, but there is a lot of coaching that should happen because I don't want them meeting anybody in your network that they're feeling insecure and they don't know how to navigate it prior to being coached, because then they kind of lose out on that opportunity. And I don't think they would make a bad impression, but I don't think it would be a lasting impression for them either. Obviously, validating their unique perspective is always helpful. Everybody likes to be validated. And normalizing those setbacks, emphasizing any types of wins that they have, and allowing them and reiterating the trust factor with them so that they know that they can really rely on you for these types of coaching moments, and they can be themselves. So we talked a little bit about these unwritten rules because you are basically their translator, and they're obviously expected to just know things. So I have a book called The Unwritten Rules I can share with all of you as well, that perhaps is a book you can share with them. Communication is a tricky one. So, older generations, so boomers really just appreciate email. Gen X is more of a text and perhaps like an instant message. Same goes with millennials, and obviously Gen Z does everything. And so taking a step back and coaching them on who they're talking to and perhaps what the best form of communication is with them is would be very, very helpful. And I go into depth with my training on, when is appropriate to send that email for a thank you note, for follow-up, when is appropriate to send a text to who for what situation, or a message, and what that tone looks like. Again, their tone can come off a little aggressive, curt, not their fault, because all they've learned is how to text each other. And if you saw the way my kids would text their friends, it's boom, 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 boom. And there's no, Mrs. Abreu, I know that you're obviously all Spanish, but like talk about, wanting to cringe with the way that they all talk to each other in terms of their acronyms and no punctuation and all the things like that. So we don't want that to move into the professional life. So really being able to break that down. Navigating hierarchy is also a huge piece for them because they are so uncomfortable talking to adults older than them. And so they're going to start with you being uncomfortable and building that trust. But when they get into a company and they have to self-advocate for themselves with their manager and with coworkers and anyone else really, they will immediately become super intimidated. And so understanding that everybody is a human being, even the CEO, right? And that nobody is, unapproachable, but trying to humanize that and going through that hierarchy with them. Also integrating the hierarchy of about boomers and about millennials and Gen X, and that's a whole nother deck I have for another time. If you're anyone's interested, I break down each generation and just how to best connect and communicate with each generation based on their own lived experiences. But anyways, navigating that hierarchy is really important, and their career progression. So I don't know if any of you are on Instagram, but I have an Instagram. It's called Adulting 101 Masterclass. And I actually posted today about how your first job is not going to probably be your dream job. I mean, it's not going to be your dream job. And guess what? It might not, like 95% chance, it's not the first job to the trajectory of your career. Your first job is there to help you. All you're supposed to do there is learn. You're learning, you're listening, you're asking really great questions. You're you're a sponge, because you're not only transitioning into work and professional life, you're also transitioning into a life of 8:30 to 5:30 commitment. And what hours of the day are for you now? You were used to there being so many hours of the day for you. Now these are very finite, hours in the night and in the weekends that you can dedicate to yourself. And how do you build out your own personal life to feel to feel productive, right? And so their career progression when they first graduate is 100% about learning. It's not about figuring out what they're going to do for the rest of their lives, because the truth is, I mean, I don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life. I don't know if anybody, everybody's kind of navigating and pivoting differently, right? So I think making that very clear to them would behoove their expectations, would really set those expectations up for them in terms of what they're doing. How are we doing on time? Okay, I'm almost done. So we talked about their mindset is obviously that frequent feedback. And I don't know how all of you connect with your mentees, but having that frequent feedback is really important. That transparency. They don't like, fluff. Just, get to the point. That's cool. It's not, it doesn't hurt their feelings. They just need it to be authentic. Obviously we talked about the purpose driven work that really matters, and their flexibility. They're not into anything beyond having the ability to work when they want to work, to have a gig of their own side gig if they want to be able to have some time to preserve their mental health. That is super important to them. And so taking them through perhaps even like their executive functioning also really suffers when they graduate. A lot of, Gen Z in general, they've gone through 504 plans, they've gone through IEPs. So they have been super supported from an educational standpoint throughout the course of their lives. And then they get to work and they have no supports, and they need to figure out how to navigate that, all of their executive functioning. And again, this is a group of people who will tell you that they suffer from anxiety or depression, or that they have ADHD and they need to take, stops and walk or whatever it is. They have no problem talking about it, but they also were never taught like the life skills of their executive functioning and how to balance. And so it becomes a problem post college that looks beyond just a career for you to consider on when you're coaching them. So in terms of active listening, they're not good at active listening. So they, teaching them and being kind of that the mirror for them to see how you behave so that they can behave is going to be the best teacher, if you will. So I think in any conversation, it's not great to cut anybody off. You really want to listen no matter what age you are, but really try and let them uh, just vomit out all the information they need to. And what I've noticed is like once you get them going, they actually don't shut up. Like they'll just keep going on and on and on. And and that's when like you've really started to open up that relationship. So try and let them really share as much as possible. But also guide them with questions, right? And allow them to think through, besides just vomiting out all this information, allow them to think through certain, ideas or what the solution could be if they are coming to you with a problem. What is that solution? Let's work towards what that next step is. After I mentor any or coach any of my Gen Zs, I always say, okay, let's talk about all of the things that we're going to do now. Like, let's get our checklist out on the things we're going to take care of and the things that we're going to kind of ponder about for the next week. And we're going to readdress it. And, things that really scare you. So having kind of that summary conversation at the end so that they feel like they have immediate takeaways that they can feel like a win is the best way to do it. Obviously, kind of validating them is, again, to me, all generations like to be validated. And this is a hard one, which is when I was your age. I do it. I mean, it's hard not to. And I do feel like in some instances, it's important for them to hear it, but constantly saying, well, when I was your age, like it's not appealing to them. They don't really care about it so try and be cautious about when you use it so that when you do use it, it's feeling more meaningful. So interviewing, again, it's talking about these unspoken rules, the thank yous, the emails, the follow-up, the handshake, a nice strong handshake, practice those things with them, the smile. I've throughout the course of the last year and a half, I've learned that those who are neurodivergent have a very hard time making eye contact. If you have a hard time making eye contact, that's okay, but try and figure out other ways to show that you're really engaged and interested. And that can be with a firm handshake or addressing, whatever it is that they need to, if they're anxious about something out of the gates. And I can go into that at another time if you're interested. But having those kind of unspoken interview rules, I would say is super important to what their impression is going to be. And that's also about crafting their story. So, which from a first generation standpoint could be a really powerful story to share. And what we want to do is we want to connect the experiences that they've had to the job description at hand. And so hopefully as they're interviewing, they're coming to you and you can look at that job description and then the two of you can kind of work through, what are the experiences that you've had in the past to why this job is so interesting to you to craft that story. And do mock interviews with them. I mean, let them squirm with you because they're safe with you. And don't prepare them with your questions. Tell them you're going to do a behavioral interview. Behavioral interviews are, tell me about a time when, or how did you handle a situation that, you were met with a partner that you were collaborating with and things didn't go the right way. I mean, there's a million behavioral questions that you can ask, but don't let them come to you and then talk through these questions together as they answer them. Networking is their biggest struggle right now. And what I can tell you all is that networking is the way most students are finding jobs right now. The job market, well, it's not good, like at all. I can't decide, and there's so much talk about a recession. I can't decide if we're really moving in that direction because I'm seeing an uptick in openings. However, what I can tell you is most people are getting jobs through their network. They're not getting jobs applying because technology has taken over and AI has taken over in such a degree that when one role is posted, the portals become so overwhelmed and oversaturated with resumes that it's hard to find that one, and it's hard to find you, the applicant. So networking has become such a critical way to find a job. So really teaching them how to network. I don't know if any of you are comfortable or who is on LinkedIn, who's not on LinkedIn. Again, that's another something I'm happy to demo at some point, but starting to teach them how to connect with their LinkedIn connections with people that, for me, for example, I went to University of Wisconsin. So I have made a very concerted effort to link in with a lot of people from UW because you share that in common, that alumni relationship. So showing them and going through even like a checklist of all the different types of groups they've been a part of growing up, and different experiences they've had, because there are people that were in those experiences or in those groups that can help them network to meet others. And it's all about just continuing to meet someone. And here's the thing, and I say this all the time to my rising and recent grads, is you might walk away from a coffee or a lunch or a Zoom call or whatever and say that was not worth 1 minute of my time. But then 6 months later, suddenly something happens and you remember that person, and they are able to help you with, it could be something in your job, in sales, like you just never know. So there is no meeting at ever that is not worth your time. And explaining that to them is really, really super key. But again, they are so uncomfortable with that reach out in general that just building up their confidence and teaching them how to realize that everybody is just another human being. And guess what? The likelihood that you're going to get a response, I don't know, you might not. Let's say 75%, 80% of the time you don't. But what about that 20%? Because that 20% could be the difference between you and a job. And so just never take it personally, because again, the the applicant tracking systems are so oversaturated now. It's not about them anymore. It's about how they're making these connections and relationships. So we talked about, them being, your role is being the translator, encouraging their resilience, helping them open their doors. And obviously I ask you to model the professionalism. So don't cancel on them last minute without, giving them the heads up. Like, expect that if you're going to behave a certain way, they're going to model it. So you want to be the best model for them and teach them what that professional etiquette looks and feels like. So this is between the both of you. And I think what ends up happening is you feel like you're the one who is driving this. But I want you to remember that this is a relationship between you and the mentee. It's probably gonna, if you nurture it, whether you're through CBO or not CBO, like hopefully it lasts a very long time. I mean, I always tell my kids, even if I'm coaching or not coaching them, like once you're my kid, you're my kid for life. So, and I'm always there to be a resource. So, have those consistent check-ins with them, and it's your time to learn from them too. And that's a really important factor to remember. They can teach you some really cool things too. And ask them the questions about their generation. Ask them the questions about how they feel and think. Ask them about what those market trends are, right? Because it's really interesting and cool to listen from their perspective and how they see the world also. So it's not just about you bestowing your you know, your guidance. It's about them being able to share with you, you know, what how they believe the future looks and what that will feel like. They're interestingly enough pretty scared of AI. I've noticed like they I don't know if any of you have practiced at all with Chat GPT. I would say if there's one thing, hopefully you take a lot of things from this call, but there's one thing I would love for all of you to play around with after this. It's Chat GPT. Um, it is your friend, and you can talk to it about anything and everything, and it will review every document. It will take you through a trip that you want to plan or a car that you want to buy or literally anything and everything. And the more you talk to it and the more information you give it, the more it really connects with you. I say please and thank you. Like we talk all day long. I call her a she, you call her whatever you want. She's my business partner. But anyways, learning from them and their digital fluency is, you know, it will only make you know, it makes us all younger, right? And understanding their diversity and inclusion perspectives also is super important because it's their passion and they're not doing anything without ensuring that everyone is, you know, they're being treated equitably. And that's it. Did I do it on time? Oh, look, a minute to spare. Any questions? I hope this was helpful.
It was very helpful. Thank you.
I think, Heather, this was terrific. And I love that you approach it not from a standpoint of being judgmental about this generation, but trying to understand. And I think it's super important for many of us who work with Gen Zers or live with Gen Zers, right? Not approaching them from a, you know, everybody's generation is different and brings to the table different strengths and weaknesses. So I really appreciate that.
I hope it was helpful, and yeah, this is something to say to me.
One of the things that Linda and I picked up is we each have mentees, and what you were talking about, almost create a checklist, and it's things that we can show our young people. We know their strengths and weaknesses, and we can point out some of the weaknesses of all these other people interviewing for jobs and say, you know, here's some of the things that other people aren't doing. If you can just master these 5 or 6 things, I mean, you really covered a lot of things, and Linda picked up things and I picked up things. So thank you very much.
Great. I'm so happy. You're so welcome.
Heather, I live with many Gen Zers and also work with them on a daily basis. And I think some things that you presented that are an aha moment for me is I had never made the connection with executive functioning and the types of supports that many students have had along the way. And that having that kind of pulled out from under them in the workplace, particularly with people in the workplace who haven't parented kids during this generation as well, would just create such a wall of misunderstandings. So
Yes.
I do, and related to that, with what the previous comment was, to have that sort of methodical check-in where there's a checklist. What are you taking out of this meeting right now? What are you gonna do today? What can you think about for the next week before you do it? And then
Yep.
also that piece about, okay, what's scary? What's scaring you right now?
Yes.
I think that's something that I hope to take away from this discussion. So thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm glad that resonated.
Yes, this was terrific. So thank you. So does anybody have any other questions? I don't want to rush.
I want to ask, yeah, Heather, it's just chock full of information for us, and it's very helpful because again, all of the things you said, or many of the things you said, let's say, we've talked about as mentors for a long
Yeah.
time, particularly about they can't stand being uncomfortable. I mean, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yep.
But that's easier said than done. But when you think about or reflect on what the points that you brought up regarding where they've come from, their trajectory and their experiences growing up, and it's not just COVID, it's a whole bunch of
Yes.
other things that have affected them or that, they've lived with, so that you've just brought a lot of ideas to the forefront. So my question is, I know this is your material. Is there any
I'll
way
share the deck with all of you. I'll share the deck with all
can
of you.
dilute that, because it's really, there's a lot in every page or every
Yeah,
slide.
no, I know. I know. I did that intentionally so that I could share it with all of you. I just ask that you don't, share it with the world, because obviously it's my
Exactly, it's your
curriculum,
stuff.
but no, I'm happy to share that all. And I highlight those things too, so that it helps draw your attention to what's important as you're going through it.
Yeah. No, it was very, 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 very helpful. Very good. Thank you so much. And
Great.
making
I'm
it
so
very
glad.
clear. Mm-hmm.
Good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
Even
This
just
was
reading
a
the slides
phenomenal.
gives people a tremendous amount of information, even just
Yeah.
like just reading. I mean, your presentation, yes, was so much more than just reading the slides, but that alone will just give people great information.
Right. That's what I wanted you to walk away with, is
Yeah.
feeling like you can take this deck and keep it, hold on to it, so that when you're meeting with your mentees, you can kind of, go through it. Obviously, I had a lot of other things to say too, but I felt like that was like the bulk of the information, because it's hard to just write it all out. So yeah.
I want to take your generations class.
Exactly.
The
Yeah,
generations in the workplace.
it's an
'Cause that
interesting
sounds
one,
fascinating.
because I feel very passionate about how, it's Gen Z's responsibility also to understand the lived experience of the older generations as well. And if they want to really connect, like, the greatest thing you can ever do, as a Gen Z with a boomer, is to call them or to ask them to a coffee or a lunch, because all boomers want to do is bestow their wisdom and give as much information as possible. And that is how that's what they love. Really, it's the fast, and then they will give you their whole network, and they want to help in every way. Gen X and millennials are a little bit different. Like, they want they want to know what the agenda is, like what you need from them, and that's okay. But it's about being a little bit more buttoned up and focused, because that's how they think. They're just like, what do you need me for? Okay, I can do that, but like, I only have a certain amount of time, and then I have to move on to the next thing, but I'm happy to help you. So I just want to make sure you are prepared for this conversation, however you want it to go. So yes, it is. It's a whole breakdown of, each generation and what they've experienced and why they are this way. But having 4 generations under one roof right now is a challenge. And the companies that I work with, most companies are very leaned into wanting to equip everybody with these generational differences.
There is a book, and Heather, I'm sure you know it, and I'm looking all through my bookshelves and I can't find it. It's called Generations. And it's a
Oh,
deep,
is it a recent book?
I mean, I
Jean
bought it with it.
Twenge.
What?
Jean Twenge.
Yeah, and I have it somewhere.
The
And for the
author.
life of me, of course, now that I'm looking for it, I can't find it. But it's a deep dive into all the different generations and kind of what they bring and kind of what, how they think, how they work, all that kind of stuff, what they
Yep.
value.
Who's
And
who's the author?
Twenge. I'll put it in the
You'll send
chat.
it to me. Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
anyway, for everybody, it's really, if you want to learn more about the differences between generations, it's really kind of fascinating. And to approach our students with that kind of, informed information, and not not treating them negatively just because they have different perspectives about work, and not being judgmental. It's really interesting to see the difference.
Yeah, I just put in the chat too. Someone asked,
Oh yeah, I
the
have that too.
book I was talking about with the smartphones is called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. He is a major author, and he's the one that's creating the movement to get the phones out of the high schools and junior highs, and and to get these kids back out on, in their neighborhoods, and not thinking that a white van is going to come and snatch your kid up, but the
Right.
white van is going to be in their kid's bedroom on their cell phone trying to get them. So what are we doing? So it's a really, I mean, it's a major, it's making a movement with internationally. So
It's a great book. Well, thank you so much to all of our mentors who joined our call.
thank you for
We,
joining.
we appreciate your time. And Heather, thank you so very much. You've given us such, tremendous information to think about and to talk about with our students. So we're very grateful. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
We'll be in touch. Bye, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
You
Thank
do.
you.
Bye.